August 18th. Thanks for joining me for another Outlaw Pulpit. And I'm in the middle, actually more on the beginning side of a series that I'm doing, a 16-week series called 16 Confessions of a Pastor, Things I've Learned Along the Way. And that's a special marking for me because it's been 16 years this month that I took on the role of being a lead pastor of a church, a brick and mortar church right here in central Wisconsin. And if you ever want to look it up, it's radiantfellowship.net. And I can find a lot of things that I'm up to there on the local side. But, you know, it's, truth be told, it was something that I had never planned for. Youth ministry was going great for me after 8 or 9 years, but I was kind of thrusted into it. And so it's been a good ride, and thought I would, you know, because I know a lot of you are pastors and leaders and, you know, things that you can learn from somebody that's been around for 16 years. And I'm sure you could offer a lot to me as well, because a lot of you have been around for way more than that. Looking at you, Pastor Bob Beeman. So anyways, last week I talked about how basically those who gossip to you will gossip about you. This week I want to talk about how God always provides. One of the things that would be very easy to do, and don't look at me wrong for saying this, because you would find probably the same thing at your job or vocation or whatever. It would be easy to be negative, okay? And now follow me on that. It's easy to become negative on things because when you're in something long enough, yes, even pastoral ministry, one can become a little cynical. And, you know, one of the things that I do besides being a pastor is I'm a police chaplain for our city. And inevitably, the police officers always say one of the toughest things to overcome as a police officer is showing up on the scene for something that for this family is traumatic, but for us, we've seen over and over again, and we become cynical towards these things. And that applies, I think, for any vocation. So I'm really straying away from being negative. I do have a couple sharp points along the way of these 16, but this week I want to specifically focus on how God always provides. I learned this lesson the hard way. You see, when I was handed the church, when I was asked to pastor the church in August of 2005, we literally were left with 8 people and a building that we had a mortgage on. It wasn't a good situation, and it was actually quite ugly. As I said, the guy that introduced me on my inauguration Sunday, he literally told the church, "This is Pastor Bob. He'll be your new pastor," and he walked out. That was it. And my wife and I, we celebrated our first Sunday by taking ourselves out to eat and submitting the receipt for a reimbursement. So it was a little shady to start with. But so coming from that scenario, I've seen the very worst of it. And there were a lot of Sundays that I just sat at the door of the church wondering if anyone was going to show up. We were in survival mode at this point. We were trying to stay afloat. If it wasn't illegal, immoral, or sinful, we were in on trying it. There was one time there was a ministry called XXX Church. It's a ministry to help people get off the addiction of pornography, and they had a campaign going called Confronting the Elephant in the Pew. And so they did this thing called National Porn Sunday, where churches were encouraged to talk about this issue of addiction. And one of the things we got to do this, we put a 40-foot blue inflatable elephant on top of our church building. And so we were doing all sorts of crazy things, and still do, to get people in the door. But one tends to be that way when you are handed a church, like I said, with that few people and a mortgage that you owe on. But you know, the thing is that God's always been faithful, and he brings the right people at the right time. We find this in ministry all the time. For those of you that are pastors, those of you that lead a lay ministry, those of you that run a parachurch ministry, those of you that just have your own thing going on, you find out that God always brings the right people at the right time. And here's the thing. Sometimes it's for a season. Sometimes it's for a long time, okay? Sometimes something may be said and they leave. Sometimes it's something they said and they leave. It's life situations. And so, but God always brings the right people at the right time. And I'm finding that to be very true once again. Because, you know, God knows what we want. And here's the deal. For any of us that have a ministry, a church, whatever, what did he say in the New Testament specifically to Peter? He said, he said, "I will build my church." There you go. So we're just going to keep doing things. We're going to keep being serving and loving people and doing outreach and trust what Jesus said, that he's going to build his church. I'll be honest with you though. Some weeks the budget wasn't met, yet God always provided. As a pastor, when you're a pastor of a church, okay, or a leader of a ministry, and you have things to take care of, here's the simple equation. No, it doesn't take money to have a ministry. Blah, blah, blah. We get that. However, if you're going to do outreach, you're going to have graphics, you're going to do t-shirts, you're going to have for those of you that are pastors of buildings, you're going to have a church building. Well, church buildings don't run on air and they don't run on thoughts and prayers. I found out the local electric company doesn't like to get paid in thoughts and prayers. And so there's going to be money that needs to be taken in. There's going to be a business side to that business, to that ministry, to that church. And it will run dry sometimes. It will get very tight. But again, I'm reminded of this point. God always provides people and prayers and finances to get through. As I was told early on by a retired pastor friend of mine, when I got nervous and panicky and all of that stuff, I literally said, I'm just struggling. We need God to come through on this one. And he says, Bob, he gave me 2 points of advice, really good points of advice. The first one, because I had to make a tough decision early on regarding staff. And he said, here's the deal, Bob. You're the pastor of the church. Pastor the church. In other words, do what you need to do. The second thing he told me regarding if you're running a ministry is that God is seldom early, but he's never late. Mic drop. I guess that's true. God is seldom early, but he's never late. So I hope that's an encouragement to you. That's week number 2 out of 16 of things I've learned in 16 years of being a pastor of a church, brick and mortar church. Because I know, and I always say that because I know there's a lot of house churches and people 2 or 3 sort of get-togethers and stuff. So if you have a question for me you want to address, send it to me, outlawpulpit@gmail.com. I will address it right here on this podcast, and I hope you have a fantastic day.